Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'm hoping that everybody has come prepared for with having read the lecture. So basically, you should have seen the tree form of the game and seen my last lecture on this same subject. Now we're going to discuss some aspects which are not covered in that lecture and do some actual experiments also. So I made a tree diagram as best I could. So here we have a situation where let's say 500 rupees is to be shared in an ultimatum game. So the P1 has 6 possible moves, which is to offer 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. Okay, that's in the first column. So this is kind of a tree which I could make easily. So at the second branch, P2 has, the second player has 2 possible moves. So each of the 6 moves has 2 branches. So there are a total of 12 possible outcomes. And so the outcome is if P1 offers 5, which is the whole thing, and then P2 responds by accepting, then the outcome is 0 and 5. The first player gets 0 because he kept nothing for himself, and the other one gets 5. And if he rejects, then both get 0, 0. So similarly for all of the possible offers, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's look at 3. If P1 offers 3, P2 accepts, then the payoffs are 2 to the first player and 3 to the second player. If he rejects, it's 0, 0. So now the first thing I want to do is to show that what this means is that there is a unique optimal strategy according to the utility maximization theory. So basically, in each case, P2 will choose, according to the theory, according to the maximization theory, P2 will choose that option which gives him the higher payoff. In all cases except for the last one, accept gives him a higher payoff, because no matter what he is offered, if he is offered 1, if he accepts he gets 1, he rejects he gets 0. So in all cases, you see, we are working backwards, we are using backward induction. In all cases, the theory says that the P2 will accept the offer except for the 0, 0 case. In the case when he is offered 0, then he is indifferent between accepting and rejecting. So at that point we cannot calculate by backward induction what will happen, because so if I say, okay, I offer you nothing, you can either accept or reject, and both are equal to you. So as a rough guide, we can say, all right, 50% he will accept and 50% he will reject. So in that case, my payoff will be 2.5 in expected value, 5 when he accepts and 0 when he rejects. So I can say that, okay, the value of a 0 offer is 2.5 to me, roughly. If I offer 1, I keep 4 for myself, then he accepts, I will get 4, he will get 1. Any higher offer will give me less. So there is a unique utility maximizing move, and that is to offer 1. This is exactly what one of the presentations was saying, that epsilon, however much, and in this case I have made it so that 1 is the smallest possible offer. But any smallest possible offer bigger than 0 will be the best thing. So if I can offer in dollars and cents, if I can offer 1 cent and I keep $4.99, then again the other player will accept. So this is what the theory says. Now, actually, I think what we'll do is we'll play this game, but since everybody has, can we find some players from outside the class to run the experiment on? 2 आदमी चाहिए. ये बाजू के कमरे में वो जो कंप्यूटर ऑपरेटर थे ना, उन्होंने कहा उनको स्टैंड बाय पे हमने डाला हुआ था, उनको बुला ला. या एनी स्टूडेंट्स? कितना दोगे इसको? 30 अपने लिए कम, उसके लिए क्यों? रिजेक्ट कर देना. फेयर ऑफ रिजेक्ट. अच्छा ठीक है. All right. So I think that it should be clear to all that the theory does not predict human behavior. This is the only thing I want to say for the moment. And if we've got two cafeteria workers, we know what will happen actually. They will make roughly equal. Actually 5 is a little bit tricky because there is no equal decision. If I put in 10, then it is natural human tendency to split equally. Agar hum, if we just get some random people off the street and we ask them to play this game and they have no experience, they will normally offer, this is what the experiment show, about 30-40% of the people offer 50-50. Fairness is built into the heart of the human. Now only 30-40%. Now some people who understand better, they try to keep a little advantage. So 60-40 is also very common. But that's about it. You don't go to 70-30 because people start thinking it's unfair. Not just the proposer, but the other party also starts to think this is not fair. And then if they think it's not fair, then they will reject.
Sir?
Yes?
लेकिन जब मार्केट कॉन्सेप्ट की बात करें सर, जिसने एक मोनोपोलिस्ट होता है सर, वो कभी नहीं चाहता कि उसका जो ओपोनेंट है वो उसके शेयर को कैप्चर कर ले मार्केट से सर. और ओलिगोपोलिस्ट भी यही चाह रहा होता है कि वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा शेयर मार्केट में खुद कैप्चर करे सर. जो सर जब इकोनॉमिक डिसीजन आते हैं सर, वहाँ तो ये फेयरनेस सर हमें बहुत कम ही नजर आती है सर.
Actually, there is a lot of material on fairness and how it drives economic decisions. For example, if in the USA they study that when it's snowing, everybody comes to the store and buy shovels, snow shovels to clear the house. Now at that time, demand is running very high, and if the store is selling the shovel for $10, they can raise the price, because actually what happens in such places is that they run out and they say, sorry, we have no more. So it is a logical option for them to raise the prices, but nobody ever does that. Why? Because when people ask, and same thing is, you have a football game which is highly popular and they are selling tickets at 1,000 rupees, and now they can say that we will sell it for 5,000 because they know that it's going to be sold out. And in fact, there are people who buy tickets because they know that there are other people who will buy it at a higher price than but the stadium, even private stadium, don't say that, okay, because the demand is running high, we will raise the price. Why? So people ask, why don't you raise prices? It will increase your profit. They know people will think that's unfair for us to take advantage of this. So there are many such situations where fairness. So in this lecture, first we did the first thing. We drew the ultimatum game and we solved this by backward induction. And this is where you see we are describing human behavior in situations dealing only with money. There's nothing else. There's no friendship. There's no. So according to economic theory, human beings should be trying to maximize the amount of money that they get. And if both people are maximizing, then there is a unique solution. Just like you have maximize the utility function subject to budget constraint, you get a unique outcome. So this is the theory says that there is only one thing that all rational human beings will do. And we just saw that there is a huge range of different types of behaviors. So it means that our theory, which predicts mathematically how human beings behave, is not accurate. So the question now is, should we stick? This is what economists say. Well, If the human beings are not acting rationally, then humans are broken. So fix the human beings. We won't fix the theory. So what we have to do is we have to teach human beings how to behave rationally, not about fix our theory. Now let's try to be more realistic and ask, why is this theory wrong? So, and then not just because for a critique, but to ask, yani, how we can build a better theory. So what were the mismatches between this theory and reality, and why do these mismatches occur? So in general, when this experiment is conducted and it has been conducted thousands of times, all over the world people are doing this, because, well, actually, you see, this experiment is interesting not because it is very revealing about human behavior. No, this experiment doesn't reveal very much about human behavior, although it does reveal something. But it's revealing because it's so flatly in contradiction with economic theory. Yani, if you take the results, if you go home and discuss, we played the ultimatum game and this has happened, so people will say, well, so what? Yani, why is this interesting? Everybody knows that this is what will happen. So, but if you take it to economists, say, no, this is impossible. It cannot happen. Because it's so flatly. You see, what happened was that we had, did we have any rejections here? Yeah, there was only one rejection of 0. That's not unusual. I mean, it's not contradictory to theory. But what happens is that, yes, there were 2 economists in the class. Normally what happens is that if you get an unfair offer, about half of the time people reject it in reality. So unfair is anything less than 30%. So if you have offer of 20% or 10%, people generally reject these offers. And now this is really the contradiction between theory and reality, is that people reject means that they accept 0 and they do not take more money. So this is kind of like preferring less money to more, which is really something which is at the heart of economic theory. If anything economics teaches you, it's that more money is better than less money. So now if people are taking less money in preference to more money, then all of the economic theory becomes called into question. So now then the question is, why do people reject these offers when they are 10% or 20%, sometimes even 30%? So this is the greater puzzle about the ultimatum game. The lesser puzzle, the less strong contradiction is that proposers also know about human beings, proposers who are not economists. They understand human behavior, so they do not make unfair offers. I mean, that's one of the possibilities. So in general, unfair offers are very few. When you go to real world players, if you call out people, we will not find people who will say that I will take 90 and I will give you 10 rupees. This happens rarely, but it does happen. And when it does happen, then the other party rejects the offer most often, not always. It's always probabilistic. So 50% of the cases, people reject. So when these results were obtained by behavioral economists, by psychologists, economists refused to believe these results. And they had lots of objections. They said that, well, people don't have experience, people don't understand what's going on. So, you see what they said that, well, if the game is repeated, and so basically then the experimental economists tried to overcome these objections. What they did was that they played the game repeatedly, and in order to avoid any creation of relationships, they kept the two parties anonymous. They can, if we have a class, we can play any two people. You don't know who you are playing with. And in fact, let's have a little bit of a game like this. I don't want to take too much time. So let's say that take out a sheet of paper and just write down, let's make it $1,000. So the game is being played for $1,000. Just those people on the table. I think 5 of you here and 5 of you here. Okay. So you decide how much you will offer out of $1,000. And then we will, you also decide how much you will offer. So you write, I keep $700, I offer $300. Write that down. This is artificial, this is not real. अपना नाम लिख दो उसको या कोई नाम कोड लिख दो अपना साथ पर्सनालिटीज हाँ कोई कोड लिख दो which you recognize your student number or something that you recognize. Everybody is made to offer, they give all the sheets to me. I should have about 10 sheets here. Everybody has written down your own number of some sort which will identify you. Okay? Yeah. Actually, they have done an experiment. They have shown that people do actually, the economists object that when the serious money is not involved, then people don't play realistically. And it is true, sometimes people do make jokes, but mostly, the results are roughly in conformity. It's not that they are completely wrong. So,
what if you have like 10 crore and you give only 1 crore to the other person?
Right. I will tell you about that soon. Alright, so you write down your response to this offer. Everybody. Whether you accept or reject. And put your name down. And think of it as a real game. That is, suppose that there was really $1,000 and this was the offer that was made to you. Yes, write your name and write whether you accept or reject. Okay, just keep the paper with you. Alright, and everybody made their decisions. Are there any rejections? Did anybody reject any offer? Yes, what was this?
Sir, 35% was offered to me and 65% rejected.
And you rejected it?
Sir, I also reject the offer.
What was that?
Because she has kept 950 for herself and only 50.
So you rejected. You had $50, you don't want $50? $50 is a lot of money.
Because she has kept more.
But 5,000 rupees? You don't want 5,000?
No, 50%, sir. Only $50, sir.
Huh?
Only $50 offer, sir.
Yes, but 5,000. What does it matter whether she gets
Sir, I
950?
want to take revenge.
So, now you see, human beings are not so simple as economic theory tells us. They have complicated motivations. So, the objections that the economists, for 20 years, these results were obtained in experiments, and the economists did not publish them. They said that the money involved is too small, people don't care about it, so they make random decisions. It's an artificial environment, like this is an artificial environment. Students playing, they don't understand real life. So according to so the economists, the behavioralists made a lot of repetitions of this game in different environments. So they did this game in Czechoslovakia after the Russian fall, where the rubles were very cheap, and they did this experiment for 1 month's salary. And similarly in Indonesia, after the crisis, the global financial crisis, it was the Indonesian rupiah was very cheap, so they did this experiment with stakes which were very high, and the same results were obtained, that people would reject very high amounts of money if they thought the thing was unjust. So and also they did many repetitions to make sure that everybody understands what the game is, and that this is a one-time affair, and this will not break up your relationship with the other party. So all of the problems that had been pointed. So ultimately, it was understood by economists that this is something real. It is not an artificial lab phenomena. And so the papers have been published, and now these results are widely accepted that yes, this actually happens. People do reject large amounts of money if they think so. Fairness is something which people value, and they are willing to pay penalties in order or to punish people who are unfair. So we come to the question of why do responders reject unfair offers. So there is one theory is that people like fairness and they dislike lack of fairness. So the technical name for the reason for rejection is negative reciprocity. So reciprocity means doing something for, if somebody does something good to you, you do something good in return, and if somebody does something bad to you, then you do something bad in return. So negative reciprocity is as this person said, that she did some harm to him by treating him unfairly. So he got his revenge for her by denying her 950, even though he had to. So, but this is what happens, that if somebody hurts you, then you go and shoot him, and you know that you will go to jail for it, but you say that okay, I get my revenge. So revenge, getting the revenge, even though at your own expense, is something which human beings do. So this is one of the reasons why people reject unfair offers. But the more important point to understand is that human behavior is complex. It is not just utility maximization. So then there is this issue of why do proposers make fair offers? That is again another puzzle, because economic theory predicts that with if you have 100 rupees to share, then you will offer 9. That's like she offered 950. That is a perfect economist. Who was the 950? Very good. So there is one economist here, but he is not an economist. You see, according to economic theory, he should have accepted $50. So now the question is, so there are two possibilities either people offer fair amount, 500 or 500 would be equal, or 600, 400. If it was, so that's not fair, but it's not too bad. One of my teachers was Robert Oman. He is a very famous game theorist. So he was, after a while, his results became famous, and he was asked, suppose that you had $1 million, and you were the one who was making the proposal. How would you share it? So you see, let's think about this question. Suppose 1 crore rupees pade mein hai, so I can say, okay, I'll take 90 lakhs and I will give you 10 lakhs. Now my thinking is that 10 lakh ko kaun refuse karega? Magar, should I think like that? Shayad wo pathan ho. So, I am also taking a very huge risk. I can get 50 lakhs. Oh, 50 lakh. Insan bano. 50 lakhs for me. 50 lakhs for you. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with you? 50 lakhs to छोड़ के 90 lakh की लालच कर रहे हैं. इतने भी लालची नहीं होना चाहिए. So Aman से पूछा, Robert Aman से कि how would you split? So he said that I would say $500,001. So why $1? The first player should get something. After all, so $1 भी जाने दिया. But this is the thing that even at high stakes, so why are you making? That's called fear of rejection. And why fear of rejection? Because I know that the other person is not a utility maximizer. So we all know that the other person is not going to necessarily, if I could trust, you see there are two things. There's one thing for the rejection. If I reject an offer, then I am not maximizing my utility, right? So that's why I have other motivations. And utility maximization, one thing, and it's not that people don't look at money. People look at money, but people have also other things that they look at. And the economics says that they only look at this, and this is wrong.
Sir, revenge is also a kind of utility maximization.
Yeah. People, human beings are complex. So for rejection, there is only my utility. But for the offer, that's why it's not just a direct rejection. When I offer, then when I offer 100 and I keep 900 for myself, then I am not just maximizing my utility, I am also counting on you to be a utility maximizer. So can I count on everybody to be utility maximizer? That is less certain. And for me to try to maximize utility, that's fine, but for me to assume that everybody else is maximizing utility, that's not fine. I know that people don't maximize utility. So that's why making fair offers is not necessarily against any. If somebody makes fair offer, we cannot say that he is not utility maximizer. Maybe he thinks that if I make any unfair offer, it will be rejected. And just like in one of the games, the person offered 3 and out of 5, because she said that she thought if I offered less, it will be rejected. So because of the fear of rejection, you might make an offer of 50-50, and then that is your utility maximizing offer. Because if you say that if I offer 60-40 and he will reject, then I will get 0. So the maximization is not, so maximization is 50-50 offer. So we cannot say that if somebody is offering 60-40, he is not utility maximizing, because it depends on what he thinks the other person is going to do. If he assumes that the other person is a utility maximizer, then under that condition, it is not utility maximizing for him to. It's more complicated to calculate the utility maximization strategy, because we have done one step of backward induction in arriving at that.
Sir, can we apply law of diminishing written
No, this doesn't apply. Law of diminishing doesn't have anything to do with this. Now, I would like to conduct. So, so there are two possible motivations for the dictator. He can either be that I like to be fair, I don't want to be unjust, or it can be that he is fear of rejection. That he would like to offer 950, and take 950 and offer 50, but he is afraid that the other party might reject. By the way, I have a paper with Saima, and also one of my students, Shahid Raza, he also conducted ultimatum game experiments in real university student settings, and there was a lot of rejections. And actually, rejection is sort of very irrational, not Pareto optimal, because nobody gets anything. So, but people were very strict. I mean, in some cases people accepted low offers, but in some cases people even rejected 60-40. That's unfair. So, in real world situation with real students in Pakistan, this game was played and explained and repeated, and lots of rejection. Any rejection is impossible according to economic theories. And now I would like to run another experiment on this class. I'm going to send about, let's see, I'm going to play the dictation game. I want to set up. Let's set up 3 situations. I will send 3 students out of the class. Okay, एक economist को दो. You go out of the class. We are going to discuss experimental setup, and then we will call you back when you are ready. और हमारा क्या नाम है? हसन. भी चले जाओ बाहर. ये हमारा पठान इसने रिजेक्ट कर दिया $50. $5,000 इसमें नहीं पड़ा. क्या सोचो? $5,000 किसी का मिल रहा होता वो उसको छोड़ देता कुछ. Just because somebody is unfair, can he? ऐसा तो नहीं है ना. Okay, you also. क्या नाम है तुम्हारा? मुनीब. हसन. और तुम्हारा? अस्मा. All right. So go sit a little bit far, and you're going to discuss something. Then we will explain it to you later. Now, चीज होती है असल में जो बात की लोगों ने कि people have multiple motivations. So there is yani we have already discussed that in blood donations. If you say, okay, I want to buy your blood to 1 liter at one point, I will give you 1,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees. And there are many people, most people even say, if I say 10,000 rupees, people will not sell. Some people will sell for no amount of money. I don't want to sell money. And you can give me $1 million and I won't sell. But if you say, oh, your friend is hurt and is in an accident, he needs blood, and you give me, he will say immediately, of course, I'm ready. So, different dimensions. So, for example, they did experiments like this. They said, okay, in a library, we want to write, actually, I think Saima did this experiment in reality in Islamic University. We were converting the books to computer systems, so you have to take the book and do the entry for it in the computer. And they said, okay, we'll pay you 100 rupees per entry, and they got some students, and they said, okay, volunteer, and they got many students that way also. So people are interested in doing public service. So now there is this, so the thing is that what people discovered is that if you are in a market area, that you have a certain frame of mind in any transaction. If you enter this transaction in the market frame, then you are thinking about money. If you enter the transaction in a social frame, then you are thinking about service. And so the same exact problem, when it is described as a social situation. So for example, we are playing this game. Okay, I take 2 students, I say, okay, there are these 50 rupees, you have to split. But imagine that this is you and your sister, for example. Or imagine that you are playing with somebody who is very poor. So that then changes the frame of the problem. Or if you just bring out a peer here and we ask that you play the game with this person, then the setup is different. Now it's no longer a question of fair share, it's a question of. So now what we do, there is a technique which is called priming. So a student comes in and you talk about how rationality is the best thing, or you talk about how generosity is such a great thing, or you talk about fairness. So there are three different possible outcomes. So we are going to play the dictator game, and I want to prime these students without letting them know that they are being primed, because people don't realize this. So we are going to, I don't know exactly, so I'm going to ask what is her name? Asma. So I'm going to set Asma up to be the dictator. She's going to share money with somebody else, and I want you to prime her to be an economist. You should, so that she should keep the most money. So you should talk about how and people should be rational. And maybe it's like this, you two will be discussing among yourselves about what we are learning from the lecture. You're not going to tell her that. And she should get the clue that rationality is the good behavior. Now, in another group, we are going to set up fairness as the norm. That, you know, two people will be talking among themselves, and the person will come. So, you will be talking, she will play the game with you. Okay, and it will be a dictator game. You don't get to accept or reject. You two will be talking about fairness, and he will play the game with you. And I want to talk about the Munib. Somebody will be talking about how Islam really teaches us generosity. You should give everything. So we will try to persuade him to give more. So this is called hyper-fair offer. So I'm going to ask him to play with you, and the two of you will be talking amongst yourselves. So we set up the groups a little bit separately, so that यानी ये चार कुर्सियों को जरा अलग कर लो, ताकि when she comes in, and I'm going to give, just form a little circle over here. So I'm going to, when they come in, I'm going to give them the same instructions, that you're going to play the dictator game.
So ये anchoring नहीं होती, priming या anchoring?
इसको priming कहते हैं. Anchoring is different, but it is similar. So you understand, everybody understand what they have to do. So three of you, यहाँ पे इसके लिए एक जगह बना दें या इसको खड़ा कर देंगे. तुम लोग जरा इस तरफ हो जाए. I don't want the different primings to interfere with each other. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about the game between yourselves. Okay, this is how I'm going to do it before you play the game. Okay. Hey, listen. They are going to come in. I'm going to give them the instructions on how to play the dictator game. Then I'm going to send them to the group, and I'm going to say that discuss a little bit about the game before you play the game. And in that discussion, you are going to talk about generosity, you are going to talk about fairness, and you are going to talk about rationality. ठीक है? Okay. निशा, तुम जाके बुला लो इन लोगों को. तुम इधर आ जाओ. Asma, you are going to be sitting in this group. There is 100 rupees. You are going to. This is going to be a dictator game. She doesn't get to choose. You can take all of the 10 for yourself if you like, and she doesn't get to accept or reject. But before you do that, I want you to have a discussion of the game. Similarly, आपका क्या नाम है? हसन. ठीक है. हसन, you are in this group. आ जाओ तुम. हसन, बैठ जाओ. Okay. तुम इधर आ जाओ. हाँ ये जरा पास कर लो. अच्छा. He has to play with him. अच्छा. So everybody understands we are playing the dictator game. अभी किसी को कुछ नहीं करना है. We are playing the dictator game. In the dictator game, basically the dictator proposes a share and the other guy has to just accept. He has no choice. गरीब को कोई choice चारा नहीं है. So but before you play the game, these groups are going to discuss among themselves about the lecture a little bit. So you can start the discussion now. There are groups of 4. तुम लोग का group of 4 है. यहाँ पे एक group of 4 है. यहाँ have a little bit of discussion about the game before you start, and then you will play the game. Alright, so if you are ready, discussion हो गया? Yeah, you can tell me when you raise your hand when you are ready. Huh? Then we will play the game. क्या हुआ? हाँ, okay, so okay, end discussion and now we play the game. Alright, ready? Everybody start dictator game between the two players. We have decided. Okay, so you make your decision. How much are you going to offer? Yeah, everybody should make it separately, independently. Yeah. Do it in your own group, then we will learn about the results. अपने अपने ग्रुप में कर ली गेम, कर लिया, हो गया. हाँ, इसको ऑफर करना है. Dictator has to offer, the other has no choice. So the other has no move in the game. You just make an offer, whatever you like. You just make an offer, whatever you like. You make an offer, whatever you like. You're just playing with one person. Everybody is just playing with one person. ये हो गया. तुम लोग का हो गया? अच्छा, तुमने कितने दिए?
मैंने इसे 40 दिए, वो भी इसलिए क्योंकि हम good notes. We are in good notes. I gave her 40 rupees. So, but still I kept 60 rupees.
Why you
I
kept
don't
60?
want to maximize her utility more than my utility.
Alright. यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? 40-60. वहाँ पे क्या हुआ?
80-20.
Alright. चलो यार, तुम लोग बिल्कुल फेल हो गए. Alright. Alright, so just to so in this case the experiment did not come out as expected, but I have actually we have done this experiment many times in other situations, and actually in my Islamic University class I had students prime for generosity, and people would give a lot more. Yani, an offer in which you give more than you keep is called a hyper fair offer, and this is rarely seen in real world. But if you prime people properly, it can be done. And similarly, you can tell people that this is a competitive, cutthroat world. Everybody looks only at his own advantage. Dunya hi aisi hai. So, and this is how the world is, and people will respond to that. And if you start by reading Ta'awanu alal birri wa taqwa, people will respond by to that also. So, whatever frame of mind they are in, this has an effect on the actions. So, yes.
ultimatum game, there is this windfall, which is windfall income that is being shared. It's like a public revenue. But what if player 1 owns the money and then he shares? I think then player 2 would accept whatever the player 1 is given.
Yes, this is a question which has also been explored, and I have given you a chapter in Colin Cameron, which is all the findings on ultimatum game. So that what you have said is correct in the sense that if so they do the same experiment and they create a sense of ownership by, so for example, at first the first player spins the spinner, and whatever number comes out on that spinner, that's the amount that he gets. So then he feels that I have won this amount. Then when you ask him to share with the other, he does not share as much as they do. But still it doesn't go to zero, even in that case, because but if it is his own money, then things can change. So, but anyway, what I'm saying, so again, these are not things which are taken into consideration by economic theory, because once the game has been described, then whether you own it or whether you don't, it's all the same. Yani, the outcome is the same. Yeah, that's one of the very important things that come out of this, is that economic theory is consequentialist. It means that it only looks at the consequences, what will happen after. It doesn't look at the process by which this outcome occurs. But human beings are not consequentialists. If I can get some money by a fair means, then I am willing to get it. If I have to cheat to get the same amount of money, I may not want to. So the outcome may be the same, but the process by which the outcome is arrived makes a difference in real life, but not in economic theory. So when you play the dictator game in real life, when people try to find out whether this thing matters, whether it's the fear of rejection or whether it's altruism, just giving something to someone else without having any counter response, without having any benefit from it. So they found out that the average offer in the dictator game is bigger than zero, so there is altruism, but it is less than what it is in the ultimatum game. So there is also fear of rejection, and both of these factors exist. And we also saw that in our class also. We saw both fear of rejection and some preference for fairness. So the human behavior has a large number of drivers, and that's basically what we wanted to say. One of them is seeking status and social approval. So people did a very interesting version of the dictator game. One version of the dictator game is that we have a student come in and say, okay, you have to give, how much will you choose to give? And I make a speech about how fair people are good people, and people who just are greedy are very bad people. So now, even if she wants to keep 950 for herself and 50, she will be, because people like approval, so they don't want to, and so even if she wants to keep 90 and give 10, if she thinks that her classmates will think that this is bad behavior, she will not do this. So now the interesting experiment was that they found a way to make this anonymous. They say, okay, you put the money in an envelope and we will give it, and nobody will know how much you have given. So then they found that the amount that the dictator gives goes even lower, but it doesn't go to zero again. So that means that people, part of it is altruism, part of it is show off. And we can understand that people will want not to appear to be stingy and miserly and greedy. So even if they really are like that, they will say that let me give some money to the other just so that my social standing in the class does not decline. So this is seeking status. This is one of the motivations, very strong motivation for human behavior. There's the desire to learn, curiosity. People have desire for mastery. This is a book by Daniel Pink. Why do people do labor? And so he has found very interesting results. Oh, so we did this: prime for fairness, prime for rationality, prime for generosity. Okay, so he found that if you do a complicated task, then giving a prize actually interferes with your ability to do that task. Yani, you put a puzzle before people and ask them to solve the puzzle. So they can solve this puzzle. Now, in a real life experiment, he called some people and he gave them a lot of different puzzles, and people could solve about 50% of those puzzles. And he said, okay, I'll give you 5,000 rupees prize for each puzzle that you solve. Now, people were so nervous that they solved much fewer puzzles on the average. So, money motivation, instead of improving performance, it actually decreased the performance. So, people's motivations and response to money is not exactly like what the economic theory tells us. Another very important and interesting example from theory of labor markets, there is the standard idea that, if there's the crime and there's the punishment, so people are monitored. Are you sitting at your desk all the time? And if some people institute rewards and penalties, that okay, there will be a random check, and anybody who's not found at his desk, he will be fined so and so. And if you have good performance, then you will get a reward. So this is supposed to improve performance, but actually it does not. It has the opposite effect in the sense that people start thinking of this as a game, how to be. So they say, okay, we are being paid for sitting at the table. Meanwhile, they are playing games on their computer, and they have this screen which immediately changes to work spreadsheet when the boss comes in. It's called the boss button. You hit the boss button and the game disappears, and there's a Excel worksheet that comes up on the screen. So people, when you start doing this, as opposed to this, you say, okay, I trust you, I will pay you a lot more, and I expect you to do a good job. According to economic theory, this will have no effect, but actually it produces higher labor motivation. Saima and I, we did an experiment in which we paid some people by some money, we gave them a gift, and we gave them a letter of appreciation, and we assessed the impact on performance. So we found that the letter of appreciation was the maximum in terms of motivating people for higher performance, and the gift was next, and the money was the least, because at least gift has some personal element, so it has some, it acts more on the social level as opposed to the monetary level. So all of these ideas that we are discussing, they are not just for outside of the marketplace, and inside the marketplace these things don't work. Actually, these things are very well inside the marketplace as well. Okay, so I think we are out of time.
We have